All right, so this really caught my eye here, and so I'm glad we could make this story happen. So Argentina confirms start of privatization process for ISA state water firm. So I don't know. You've probably heard it said, over the past couple decades, as these wars are fought for oil. They say, yeah, today we're fighting for oil. In the future, there's going to be wars for water. There's going to start to be water wars, and there's going to start to be the commercial commodification of water to a greater extent over time. Argentina's government has formally announced the start of the privatization process for struggling state-owned waterworks, ISA. I hope I'm saying that right. The struggling state firm provides water and sanitation services to some 11.2 million people in Buenos Aires and part of its suburbs. The privatization plan is part of President Javier Milei's economic program. ISA was included in the so-called Ley de Bases mega reform passed last year, which includes a package of economic reforms and a list of state-owned companies that were subject to privatization. Now, this next paragraph got omitted from the slideshow accidentally, but I'll read it. The privatization of the company will allow for the modernization of the sector and improve the price and quality of the service, I'm sure, said presidential spokesperson Manuel Adorni at a press conference. The process will incorporate private capital through the transfer of 90% of the company's shares currently held by the state, he explained. This will be done through a national and international public tender to select a new operator for the company and, in parallel, an initial public offering to open up the company's capital to other investors, Adorni added. Now, Mint Press News dug a little deeper into this, and so the plot kind of thickens here a bit. Argentina announces privatization of state water with Israeli state firm the principal beneficiary. The government of Argentina have announced plans to privatize the country's water resources, selling it off to foreign firms. Israeli state-owned water company Mekarat, accused of complicity in war crimes against Palestine, is in pole position to take advantage. Mekarat has already made confidential deals with 12 Argentinian provinces. The move is part of a far-right anarcho-capitalist President Javier Milei's fire sale of state assets. Milei's administration has fired tens of thousands of public employees, shuttered 13 government ministries, and removed price controls on rent and key goods. As a result, poverty has drastically increased, with extreme poverty now being about 30% of the entire country. So Al Jazeera did a piece on this last year, November of 2023. Amid Gaza war, activists in Argentina aim to expel Israeli water company. Since September 2022, 7 Argentinian provinces have signed wide-ranging agreements granting Mekarat significant influence over how they allocate water resources. Marta Maffei, a former deputy in the National Congress, is among those who oppose Mekarat's expansion in Argentina. She has advocated for a law to protect water access as a basic human right. Why should a state enterprise that manages water as a form of social control come to Argentina? Maffei said. In our territories, there are also indigenous peoples. There are poor peasant communities who demand their water. Maffei's home province of Rio Negro signed an agreement with Mekarat in February to transfer a number of responsibilities to the company, including calculating the economic value of water and drafting a proposal for an authority to regulate drinking water and sanitation services. BDS, of course, mentions Mekarat illegally appropriates Palestinian water, diverting it to illegal Israeli settlements and towns inside Israel, and imposes severe obstacles to Palestinians accessing their own water. Amnesty International has accused Israel of depriving Palestinians of their access to water as a means of expulsion. A French parliamentary report accused Israel of imposing a system of water apartheid in the occupied Palestinian territory. So yes, you're contracting this private water firm, this is Israeli firm, which already uses water as a weapon, as a punitive weapon against oppressed people, and bringing it into a country whose poverty rate has just exploded. Now we're going to see a little video here. This is from Apartheid Adventures, so shout out to them. They go into more detail about this water company and how they oppress through water apartheid, quote unquote, the Palestinians.
Water. Everyone loves it. Everyone needs it. So come to Israel, where Mekorot, Israel's national water company, makes sure that you have all the water you want if you're of the correct ethnic religious category. And how does Mekorot guarantee that? By making sure all that water doesn't get wasted on those who are not of the correct ethnic religious category. For you, if you're of the correct ethnic religious category, 300 liters a day. For them, 70 liters a day. For you, continuous year-round uninterrupted flow. For them, rationing, restrictions, cutoffs in dry months. Your towns pay 1.8 shekels per cubic meter. Their towns pay 2.5 shekels per cubic meter. Mekorot, liquid apartheid. In Israel, if you're of the correct ethnic religious category, you have civil rights, voting rights, take their land and build a settlement rights, and best of all, water rights. For those who are not of the correct ethnic religious category, Mekorot will pump the water from under their land, dry up their springs and wells, and make them pay for the water. And if they don't cooperate, we'll destroy their pipes and cisterns. In fact, they'll be lucky to get any water at all. If we don't admit their town as a town, Mekorot won't connect them to the national water carrier system, all to guarantee your 3 showers a day and your ethnic privilege discount if you're of the correct ethnic religious category. That's why we call Mekorot apartheid in a pipe. And they're not stopping in Israel. Mekorot is making deals in Cyprus, Italy, Greece, Brazil, Argentina, Uganda, the Netherlands. Okay, they were stopped in the Netherlands and Uganda and Argentina, but with your support, Mekorot can start privatizing water everywhere and making sure that water is pure, clear, and plenty for those who can afford it. So if you support apartheid, Israeli settlements, ethnic privilege, privatization of water and natural resources, income inequality, and everything else that makes you feel special, then join Apartheid Adventures in saluting Mekorot, making sure water is a privilege and only for the privileged few.
Well done there by Apartheid Adventures. So back to the article briefly. He, meaning Manuel Adorni, the spokesperson for Milei, he added that the proposal keeps the company's employees as shareholders with 10% of the firm's share capital. ISA currently has 6,202 employees according to the official data. The government did not specify whether there will be layoffs as a result of the privatization, though it is widely expected. The company, formerly known as Agua y Saneamientos Argentinos Sociedad, I came close. I made it 60% of the way through. Sorry. Anonima was originally concessioned in 1993 to the French company Suez and other minor partners. In 2006, it returned to state ownership when Nestor Kirchner's 2003-7 government terminated the contract. ISA needed contributions from the Treasury worth some $13.4 billion since its renationalization until 2023, according to Adorni. In 2024, the company produced a surplus for the first time since 2007. So, when you look at policies like, the gutting of Medicaid here, like what we're going to cover in the next segment, adding medical debt back to people's credit reports, when you look at the gutting of government programs, the mass firings of government workers, and you ask yourself, okay, who does this actually help? How does this make the society any better? How could the commodification of water in such an impoverished society as Argentina possibly do any good for anybody? And I think this is an example of a story in which you kind of get your answer within the question itself. If you remember earlier on in the article, it said, or I believe this was in the Al Jazeera piece, they said, what you essentially do is you essentially sabotage these government agencies, these government programs, and then you allow the private sector to come in and cannibalize them. A fire sale of state assets into private hands. That's essentially what this is. That is essentially what this is. And it's a very, very terrifying thing. When you look at the inequality in Argentina, at the rise in extreme poverty since Milei took over, and now you're going to allow these for-profit companies to come in and commodify the water supply. You're just talking about exacerbating suffering for the sake of allowing capital to cannibalize the state. That is essentially what that is. And in this case, to add insult to injury, you're giving the contract to this Mekarot, which engages in apartheid as its MO. So pretty nightmarish, and it always caught my eye, and it always caught my eye when I look at stories about water, because I remember hearing, you know what, someday there's going to be wars over water, right? Now we fight them over oil. Someday you're going to have wars over water, and we're getting there.
Well, that's the call. I forget his name, the Big Short guy. His next prediction was to invest in water. That's where he's put his money now. Yeah, those companies, the ones that publicly trade, have increased their stock price exponentially. So a lot of people are betting on that. We've seen what this looks like. If you remember, Bechtel pushed through government legislation to make collecting rainwater illegal in Bolivia after they privatized the water supply, and there was such a public outcry they had to get rid of it. This is another example of how far the oligarchs will go if the people let them. It is no coincidence, and it's very revealing, that Milei is such a hero to so many of the people in the Trump administration, like Vance, like formerly Elon Musk. They love this guy. So what does that tell you about what they want America to be? If you look at what he's turning Argentina into, and they think that's a great idea, chainsaw, right? This is what they like. They want you to basically be like the human body in the Matrix. You're a power cell for their world, right? That's all they see the human race as. Peasants. The way aristocrats have always seen the broad population. They really want to go back to those circumstances that prevailed in civilization until relatively recently. The idea of broad-based prosperity and some kind of recourse to the law against oligarchs, against aristocrats, that's a pretty recent concept. What they're trying to do is, in a world of 21st century technology, revert to the circumstances that have prevailed in most societies really until the 20th century, where you're going to have a very narrow band at the top of super wealthy people who enjoy all of the fruits of civilization, and the rest of you are there to serve them. Your backs are there for them to stand on. And the more they can extract from you, the better. And the more they can crush you down into a state of desperation such that you don't have the time, energy, or calories to organize and rise up against them, the better. This is the world they want. If you want to see what they want, watch what Milei does in Argentina.
Please clap.